On the penultimate lap of the 2024 Australian Grand Prix, Carlos Sainz was on course for a commanding victory, with Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton forced out of contention due to car issues. Ferrari had their sights set on securing their first 1-2 finish in quite some time. Further down the grid, George Russell was chasing Fernando Alonso for 6th place. And then, as they approached turn 6, things took an unexpected turn.
Oh, big crash! George Russell with a massive accident!
Now, this situation is a bit controversial. Was Alonso's 20-second post-race penalty a fair decision? Well, events like this fall into the grey area of the sport, where it's really hard to solely blame one driver. I mean, look at this gap. It's not as if George was about to hit him from behind and had to take an evasive manoeuvre. While it's true that ground effect cars can become unsettled in the wake of dirty air in corners, these drivers are well aware of the challenge. I believe the penalty was harsh. It was a racing incident. It's the penultimate lap, so naturally the driver in front will defend aggressively. Perhaps if it were 10 or 20 laps earlier, Alonso wouldn't have resisted as much. Nonetheless, it was a disappointing decision from the stewards. I don't wholly fault George either. Mishaps occur in the heat of competition. Losing control and hitting a wall is an unfortunate aspect of the sport. Moreover, this isn't the first time such an incident has transpired. In Singapore last year, George crashed while chasing Lando Norris for 2nd place. On that occasion, he clipped the wall and went straight into the barriers. So let's talk about George Russell, the boy from Kings Lynn who drives for Mercedes and is regarded as one of the top talents in Formula One. Before stepping to F1, George had a remarkable junior career, arguably one of the most impressive on the current F1 grid. He was outstanding in karting, won the Formula 4 championship, and secured 3rd place in the Formula 3 European Series. Subsequently, he clinched the GP3 and Formula 2 titles in consecutive years. In Formula 2, he beat the likes of Lando Norris and Alex Albon to snatch the championship. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. Now let's look at how George has performed in F1 so far. During his time at Williams, he outpaced his teammates. He consistently demonstrated greater speed than his first teammate, Robert Kubica, who was undoubtedly a skilled driver. However, it's important to acknowledge that Williams had the slowest car on the grid at that time. As I've mentioned before, it's challenging to accurately assess driver performance in such slow machinery. When Nicholas Latifi became his teammate at Williams, the trend continued. George outperformed him and secured higher qualifying positions in nearly all races. When George moved to Mercedes in 2022, that's when things got interesting. Now he found himself in a competitive team that had clinched the previous 8 Constructors' titles, alongside his teammate, 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton. While Mercedes wasn't in contention for the championship, it marked a significant upgrade from his previous stint with the backmarker Williams. And George truly impressed us with his consistent performance in a car that presented challenges. He secured a top 5 finish in every race he completed except in Japan and Singapore, achieving 6 podiums and clinching his first victory in Brazil. Finishing 4th overall in the standings, he was 35 points ahead of Lewis, who came in 6th. It was a remarkable season for George. It's important to note that Lewis wasn't entirely comfortable with the setup. He spent each weekend experimenting to enhance the car's performance and drivability. Unfortunately, this experimentation occasionally led to incorrect setups, resulting in race setbacks. In contrast, George seemed to have a better rapport with the car, displaying greater comfort. Still, both drivers despised the Mercedes W13 for its sluggishness, difficulty in handling, and severe porpoising issues. In 2023, we anticipated the Mercedes duo to once again display similar performance levels, but that wasn't quite the case. While they were evenly matched in qualifying, Lewis emerged as the quicker driver during the races and exhibited greater comfort with the car. In terms of the Drivers' Championship, Lewis secured 3rd place, whereas George finished 8th, trailing Lewis by 59 points. Additionally, George encountered some challenges last season, including occasional mistakes and technical issues that forced him to retire from a couple of races. And so far this season, it's challenging to assess their performances based on the first 3 races. Lewis retired from the Australian Grand Prix due to an engine issue, while Russell lost control while pursuing Alonso. In Saudi Arabia, Lewis opted for an alternative strategy which ultimately didn't pay off since there was no late safety car situation. You get the point. So, what's the verdict on Russell's performance compared to Lewis? Well, comparing him to Lewis is a rather complex task. After all, Lewis is a 7-time world champion for a reason, so it might not be entirely fair to draw direct comparisons with George. However, George has demonstrated significant potential. He's been consistently strong, particularly in qualifying, and has often been in close contention with Lewis. However, when Lewis is in his element and feeling comfortable with the car, it remains uncertain if George is currently capable of truly challenging him. He has also been a bit more prone to mistakes, which at times cost him dearly. I won't put him in the same category as some of Lewis's previous teammates like Alonso, Button and Rosberg, as he isn't quite at that level yet. However, he's quite close to those guys. He's young and possesses the potential to win races and contend for championships. It's worth noting that since joining Mercedes, the team has struggled to produce a competitive car capable of challenging for victories and championships. Therefore, it's somewhat challenging to accurately assess how George would perform with a faster car. Nevertheless, he has showcased his talent on multiple occasions, securing a race win, numerous podium finishes, and even claiming pole position, which is quite commendable. Now, Lewis's departure for Ferrari in 2025 has created a bit of a dilemma for Mercedes. Previously, Lewis was the mainstay, but now introducing a new driver would necessitate Russell stepping into that role. However, the question remains, is he prepared for it? I don't know about you guys, but Russell just doesn't exude the same confidence as the top drivers from other teams. Red Bull boasts Max, who's showing utter dominance right now. Ferrari has Charles, McLaren has Norris, and Aston Martin has Alonso. George could potentially be on par with these drivers, but it feels like he hasn't quite reached that level yet. He's close, but not quite there. Or maybe it's just my perception. Let me know in the comments what you think. Perhaps he's overshadowed by the fact that Lewis is his teammate, or maybe it's the performance of the car, or it could be the occasional mistakes he makes. If I had to choose Russell's best F1 race, it would undoubtedly be his stand-in drive for Lewis at the Bahrain GP in 2020. That race showcased his immense talent. He came incredibly close to winning a commanding race, only to be thwarted by a pit stop issue. The fact that it was his first race in a Mercedes and he was immediately quick is what made it so special. Additionally, his second place finish in wet qualifying at Spa in 2021, achieved with a Williams, was also phenomenal. And of course, his maiden victory in Brazil was just flawless. Other than that, there haven't been any outstanding performances from George. What he did have was just a lot of silly mistakes.
George Russell hadn't got full control of his car.
That's George Russell to the inside of Max Verstappen.
Trying to make a move, moved over on Schumacher, little touch.
George Russell has hit the barrier. There's front wing further back down the racetrack.
And that tends to make people somewhat skeptical about his current form. When you consider drivers like Max, Lewis, Fernando, and Norris, who seldom make costly mistakes, Russell's current performance doesn't quite leave a strong impression.
Wait, so I've gone down here, hang on, what?
So, what are the expectations for George this season? Once again, the Mercedes car doesn't seem particularly competitive this year, and it's unlikely to contend for the championship. Therefore, the expectations for George would be to maximise his points haul, capitalise on any opportunities for podium finishes, and if a chance for victory arises, seize it. While he excels in qualifying, there's room for improvement in race pace. Considering his less than stellar performance last year, a realistic target for him would be to finish in the top 6 in the standings, though it won't be easy with McLaren showing strong pace. I anticipate McLaren and Ferrari to be the main competitors for Mercedes this year. It's uncertain who will partner George in 2025 at Mercedes, but there are several intriguing prospects currently under consideration by the team. These include Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz, Alex Albon, and Kimi Antonelli, all of whom are highly regarded drivers. Except for Antonelli, there isn't much information available about his potential performance in an F1 car yet. For more details on this topic, check out my other video on the channel. Now, onto the main question, does George possess the capability to challenge the likes of Max and Lewis? Can Mercedes genuinely rely on George to guide them to victory in the future if they produce a race-winning car? The answer is yes, absolutely. There's no question about it. However, at present, I believe George just needs to refine certain aspects, steer clear of silly errors, and maintain a clean record. I'm confident that in the forthcoming years, we'll witness him contending for victories regularly, provided Mercedes develops a competitive package. And that's it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe. If you'd like to support this channel, join the membership and get access to exclusive perks, and I'll see you guys in the next video.